fredda stanza, guardi le stelle che tremano d'amore e di speranza. Ma il mio mistero è chiuso in me, il nome mio nessun saprà. No, no, sulla tua bocca la dirò quando la luce
So the service today is being videoed, and so people will be able to see it from a distance, as well as to be able to go back and relive some of the stories that I'm sure will be told today. Leo, the relentlessly optimistic and positive Leo. The intellectual, the voracious reader, the humble and kind Leo. The one who for the last 15 years of trials and tribulations has made his motto, "I'm not going anywhere." Well, we all have our memories of Leo, in particular the love of his life, Barbara, who spent an amazing 55 years married, and we will hear a little more later about how they met. It's one of those true romances. But what we're going to do with the service today is that Leo's oldest brother, Don, is going to share some memories and some stories from the whānau, and also about the Holy Trinity Church, which is a very small church that we're not in now. Looking at the crowd, that's a blessing, but which Leo played an incredibly important role in restoring. I then get to share a few memories and insights into Leo's romance with Barbara and his time in Auckland. Leo the activist, Leo the exceptionally gifted, and I know only too well, patient craftsman. And then there will be an opportunity for people to share some of their own stories about Leo, either here or when we go to the wharekai after the service. And there is also a book at the back, which if you haven't written in, that will also be there, where you can leave a message for Barbara and the whānau. Then, not only was Leo a prodigious reader, but he was an opera fan. And so there will be an opportunity for people to say a farewell to Leo, to his favourite piece of opera, Nessun Dorma. And there are some kawa and some rosemary that you can place to go with him, which are in, appropriately, some magnificent bowls that Leo crafted. After the kai, and in particular a thank you to the whānau from Manaia for the kaimoana, Leo is salivating. It was one of his great joys in the time when he couldn't eat a lot, was a feed of mussels. Then after the kai, Leo will be taken down to the Holy Trinity Church that he restored. And those of you who'd like to drive down with him are welcome. And from there he will be taken to a private cremation. So, again, welcome to everybody, and can I invite Don to come and share some stories from the whānau?
After that, I don't know how to start. Yes, welcome again, everybody here. I'm glad we aren't out at Paraguay, we were never fitted in. First of all, I'd like to say I'm quite comfortable here for a simple reason that this is the church which my father went when he was a child, and as he grew up. And in fact, I have a Bible at home presented from this church when he left Thames to go to work somewhere else. So we're connected here, and also when my mum died, we were out at the marae, but she wanted to come back here for a funeral. So I'm quite comfortable to be here for this particular day. I've been asked to talk about the family here, but historically we are part of Thames. The shores are, if you go around by the Bank of New Zealand, there's a house, Bowen House. Bowen House was originally my great-grandmother's house, and it's now there for people with hearing aids and all sorts. But it's used as commercial property, but they must have built it pretty good then, in the 1870s. So, we've been here for a long time. As far as our family are concerned, we moved from Hikataya when I was 4, and we went to live, as I remember, Fred says we went up Waiatai first, but I don't remember that because I was too young. We went and lived in a shop. Thames was quite different. There was a lot of old shops down in Shortland Street and in Davey Street, in the shop which was falling down, and we lived there for a while, and then my mother got some money and we bought the house up thing. I always remember the main two things I remember about Davey Street is there was a lady next door, and she had a parrot, and the parrot was it could talk. It was during the war, and there was a time when we thought maybe the Japanese would come here and take over the country, and we were worried because this parrot used to get up in the morning and yell out, "To hell with Hitler and Bugger Tojo." and we thought, oh, what's going to happen to the parrot, But so that was sort of it. The other thing I remember there was my first week at school. My mother used to make us cakes and put in our bags, and for going to school. And we always had a cake in our thing. And when this morning we come in, Fred and Bob, my two oldest, she said, "Oh, there's no cake today," but there must have been one because she slipped it in my lunchbox. And when I got to school, I opened it. "Hello, there's a cake there." She said there was no cakes for us today, so I must have had somebody else's lunch, and I refused to eat it. That's sort of about the only two things I remember about that place. But anyway, when we were young, we were lived up in a house at Waiatai. Now the house, it didn't have electricity, so therefore we didn't have power. So all our schoolwork and everything was done by candles. With candles, no lights. We used to have to go around and cut firewood for to cook on, and in the summertime we ran out of water, so we used to have to. There was no water, no town water, because we only had one tank, and we used to have to go and walk down to the next door neighbours over the hill with a bucket, bringing water up, all the water for the house, just like you see nowadays in the third world, don't you? You don't think it's here. Well, that's how we actually brought up. We were a very poor family. We didn't have very much, but we survived it. We had a great time with we all knew about the mines around there. We weren't supposed to go in there, but we used to go in there. Did all sorts of things. We remember putting nails on the railway line for the train to go, because we thought a 6-inch nail, you see. We thought that we could make knives out of it and all sorts. The guard used to hear, because there used to be passenger trains then, and down by the park down there, and the guard used to hear, know what had happened. He'd be looking for these kids, and because we'd be gone by then. We did all these sort of things. We had a great time as kids. My mother made us, as far as school was very essential, and we attended school, but maybe we didn't have the best of clothes, but we had somebody at home that made us do our work and all that, which, to my mind, later in life, it helped us. We sort of gave us the push to understand that we needed to learn things and do things. I left home and joined the Navy when I was 15, so I didn't see my brothers and sisters growing up. It wasn't until later in life that I realised the progress they'd made, because I never bothered to come home, and this was nothing to me here. And it sort of, when I got down to, I got transferred in my job to Napier, and while I was there, I had an old Morris Oxford, but I suddenly found that Fred lives around the corner, and this is the bloke at school. I didn't think this, did very well at school, and neither did anybody else, but I said to him, hey, my gearbox on my car, I couldn't change gears. The next thing, Fred's round there, pulls my car to pieces, and I looks at the ground, and here's all these pieces of gearbox there, and I thought, well, that's the end of my gearbox. But next thing, he comes and says, there's your car. I get in, nothing wrong with my gears. He'd repaired the whole lot. Then I realised that he was a good mechanic, that he'd gone through and done these things, and whereas I thought, oh, I was smart because I'd gone away. So that was, a wake up for me, but the biggest wake up was when I the church at Paraguay was blowing down, and I happened to be on the trust board that supposedly owned all the churches, and the big storm came, and the church leant over, and the council contacted the trust board and said, look, you've got to demolish it. Well, this had happened to a lot of our churches. At Matatā, there was a church there. And over, council said it's dangerous, demolished, it was demolished. There was a couple down the east coast with the same. And this was going to happen in Thames, and that church out there. But before we had to get somebody to pull it down, and then I was looking around for builders or somebody, and I couldn't find one. And I thought, oh, I've got a brother that's a carpenter or builder up in Auckland. I'll ring him up, and I rang him up and said, can you come have a look at this church? Well, Leo come down with the engineer. The engineer said, demolish. Leo said, oh, no, shouldn't demolish that, it's okay. Well, what happened? Next thing, Eric comes onto the scene, and between them, they pull the church up, and theoretically, they were supposed to do it under supervision of an engineer because the council said it was too dangerous. Well, I don't think they saw the engineer again. They just went in, and next thing the church is up and it's fully braced up to earthquake standards and today as far as the structure is concerned. But the council said still can't use it because, look, it's rotten. The timber's rotten. So the next thing was we were still forced with getting rid of this church. So we've actually had already put in to the Lotteries Commission to try and get a loan to do some work on it. And Leo worked out how much it was, about 200 and something $1,000, a lot of money. And I think they must have thought we were a bit cheeky because they asked for an interview. They wanted an interview with somebody at the church. So I went down to the church with a person from the Internal Affairs who gives out the money. And after, you'll see some of the photos, I think, that's in there, how the church looked. It had all bits of bracing and we said that makes this mess. And she said, in the end, she said, look, the only reason we're giving you this money is the person who's going to supervise the job. And I thought, who's she going to say? And I said, who's that? And she said, Leo Shaw. I hadn't realised that he had people recognise him as a person who could renovate or restore old buildings. And it was the only reason we got the money for that. Well, if you go out and have a look at the church, you won't realise how much work that went into that. There'll be photos out there, and all the windows like this had to be. The church was made by the local Maori people, and they made everything, including the nails. That's made by a blacksmith. Quite different to modern nails, and that's how we had to sort of deal with to restore the building. Not use those nails, but we had to. It's a type of building that was quite different to modern buildings, and the fact that it was actually finished. And if you get the other one that goes in about how the progress of the family, we went in and there were lights of this hanging from the ceiling. When this church was built, that light wouldn't have been there. There'd been, if there were any lights, there'd be kerosene lights hanging. But they changed it. They put lights like that hanging. But Leo said, no, it should look, those lights shouldn't be here. So what's happened, Joe has formed the lights so you can't see them. They shine onto the ceiling and come down, and it gives the appearance that it's that there are no lights there, just the way it was. The other thing, if you lift this carpet here, you'll find in there'll be bits of tin, and there'll be like a grating along the centre of this church. It's exactly the same as there. And it goes back to the history of this area, because they actually had gas works, which they had gas in at the back of the church. Over there's a platform. And what it was, they had a boiler and they had a pipe underneath. And the actual grills, the openings there are just to allow the place to be heated. But what Leo did, if you go out there, it looks like a beautifully sort of done bit of I suppose, craft in the middle where this grating has been made into a sort of a nice looking piece of flooring. I don't know how to explain, but anyway, that's it. The other, there's one other thing. He did quite a few things to make it, put it back to what it looked like when it was actually built. So it's worthwhile going and have a look at. But the main thing about this whole project, it actually showed to me how my brothers had managed to get themselves from those kids that were like me, running around bare feet, no backside in their trousers sometimes, having to cut their own wood, candles, everything. Poor thing actually came out and, like Leo, made a really a good in their life, you know. And it goes back to, I suppose, you know, you hear about those people today, and you make you think, well, everybody's got a chance if they just put their, shoulder to it. So, that's about all I've got to say, but thank you for listening. I hope I haven't made a mess of it. Thank you, Jay.
Kia ora, Don. As Barbara said, and we were joking about this, was it yesterday? The saying, he done good. Yeah? And I'm sure Don's story, not only about Leo, but about other members of the whānau, rings so true. And I've had the benefit of some of those skills as well, and I'm sure many others have. So let me fill in a bit of the Leo side from when he left this magnificent part of the world, and then, of course, came back. Leo was one of the first batch of the 10 Māori trade training apprentices who went to Auckland. And he often used to talk about that time, and they lived at the Māori Boys Hostel in Dominion Road, and their training was just down the road from where my house was in Mount Wellington at the Sylvia Park stores. And the person who trained him was ex-Colonel Arapita Awateri. And so Leo really learnt exactly the skills Don's talked about from zero base of how to put stuff together. And then one night he went to the movies. And I'm not sure that he actually watched much of the movie, because sitting next to him was a young lady he didn't know. But from what I could gather from Barbara, they spent most of the movies eyeing each other up. And at the end of that, Leo took the bus back with Barbara to her place. And from that time onwards, they were to use the language of the time, an item. They rather bravely got engaged without telling Barbara's mum. But of course, she subsequently came to love Leo as everyone would. And so that was the beginning of a love affair and 55 years of marriage, where moving down from Auckland, where Ian had arrived soon after they were married, when they were living in Greyland. And then Leo moved down to Turangi when they were doing the work down there on the Tongariro Dam. And of course, anyone who's seen the old workers' cottages down there, it wasn't really a place for a mum and a baby. But Leo managed to get allocated a house at the temporary village at Wairake, and they came up, and they all travelled down in Nina's V-dub, Nina being Barbara's mum, and life was good there, very good. Old Coal Range, which was the heart of the wee cottage down there, and as always throughout their life, they saw the positive sides. Leo went out fishing, the other love of his life. From there, they moved on to Meremere, and Leo was the village carpenter in the days when the state had such things. And ever the craftsman, he learnt how to hone the skills that he developed as an apprentice at that time in Auckland to become a problem solver of the kind that Don has talked about. Meanwhile, their house in Strong Street, which many I know here will remember, was being built, but being built in those days with the old hand tools, and which took a bit longer than anticipated. But eventually they got back there. In the meantime, Tony had been born in Taupo Hospital. They came up to Auckland, and Joanne was born there in 1971. And they lived in that house, the family house, until about 7 years ago, and Leo built this reputation in Auckland for being one of the most meticulous and trustworthy builders that you could imagine, and he trained many young apprentices in that time as well. Then they moved down to Dunkirk Road, and there's also some people who are here, I know, knew them down in Dunkirk Road, and Leo was in his element again. Every time I went round there was another project, and the greenhouse and the container in the backyard, and building fences for Barbara's chooks. And then, of course, when they came to sell it, we discovered some of that was not consented. But Leo thrived again there, but when he could, he'd of course come up here, up to the Pixie House, up the Waitahi Valley, and do jobs up there as well as go fishing. And then about 18 months ago, the time had come to decide for Leo to come home. And they bought this lovely house down in Vicky Ave, looking out at the sea, just perfect, but again, sure enough, Leo found jobs to do. Meanwhile, of course, from 2004 onwards, there was a shadow over his life. Leo had his first extensive cancer surgery back in 2004, and as seemed to always happen, there were complications. And no one I know who has been through those things had the forbearance and the relentless optimism that Leo had. He had, despite all of the hope and disappointment through each of the illnesses he had, this extraordinary will to live, and not just to live, but to live life to the full. And so that's kind of the Leo, the person, but I've also been asked to talk a bit about Leo the activist. And there are some friends here as well who are mates of Leo's from that time. And I first met Leo in 1981 during the Springbok tour, and as did many others. And an old mate of his, John Minto, can't be here. He's coming up on Sunday, but he sent a message. I met Leo and Barbara in 1981 in the build-up to the Springbok tour protests. It was one of those friendships forged on the streets and at the barricades as our generation protested the brutality and oppression of South Africa's apartheid system and began to examine our own colonial legacy of racism in this country. Leo was one of those people who was good to have on your side. not just because he was physically impressive and undaunted by the inevitable conflicts with police, but because he was relentlessly confident and cheerful. He had a great sense of humour to put things in perspective after some heavy-duty action with the police. He didn't look like a typical protester. He had this tan leather jacket and these jeans, which used to be the uniform for plainclothes detectives. And so more than once, Leo was challenged for being a police infiltrator, and he had a camera, so he was taking lots of photographs. Yes, he took it with great humour. We used to laugh about it a lot. And he and Barbara became an important part, John reflects on this close-knit circle of collaborators, not by design, but by the staunchness of always being there in the thick of things. Not only on the street, but when there were things to be done. The newsletters to be stuffed, the phone trees to be activated, the placards and banners to be painted. And Leo's building skills were also called on to help the movement, something Leo was proud to contribute, but for which he never sought recognition, which was typical of Leo. I know if he'd been able, Leo would have been thrilled to support the emerging generation of Black Lives Matter protests. I haven't kept pace with Leo and Barbara over the years as their family has grown and developed, but I know he was proud of his whānau and in particular delighted in his grandchildren. I feel proud to have known Leo and to have called him a friend. It was a privilege to have shared such intense times with him. Thank you, Barbara and the whānau, for sharing him and his life with us. He was a good man in a world where there is a shortage of good men. The world is smaller for his passing. Haere rai, Leo. Haere, haere, haere. And at special request from Barbara, the veterans of 1981, Amandla! Amandla Nguetu! I could see his hand twitching. Just a handful more thoughts about Leo and an enduring friendship. Those of you who may have been in Mount Wellington at my house will know it is another of those testaments to Leo, and every time we had a crazy idea, I had a crazy idea, he wouldn't tell me it was enough. We would work out how to make it happen. One day we climbed up on the roof and I thought, oh, gee, it's a good view, Leo. He says, yeah, it is a good view, isn't it? And so the house doubled in size. But we had many other political adventures along the way. And I just want to share two. One was when President Arroyo was coming from the Philippines and there'd been killings in the Philippines and we had a protest up at Waitangi. And I said, Leo, can you make us a coffin? And I just meant kind of a little ply box. Leo made a proper coffin. Painted black, and he had this Jeep. And so we had to take it up to Waitangi, so we put it on the top of the Jeep and covered it up, because driving up there with a coffin on the top of the Jeep might have been a bit... And we brought it back and we put it under my house at Ruawai Road. And then one day he was putting some underfloor insulation in there, and he got one of these young men from the hire team, young Samoan guy, and Leo sent him in under the house to go and put it in the paper. And he went in and he shot out. He says, there's a coffin in there, I'm not going in there. And he'd never do things in half measures. We had some TPPA protests recently. I said, Leo, can you make a Trojan horse to go down Queen Street? 3-metre high Trojan horse down Queen Street. And so there are many, many stories that people will have. And these are stories of people of unwavering principle and commitments to social justice, but also incredibly thoughtful, caring friends. And as always, Barbara's made her contribution in this, looking after her mum when she had Alzheimer's, then looking after many other elderly people as a carer. But their house, as many of you know, became the refuge for international students, and the word got around this was the place to go. And there are, I think, many pictures out the back of those who were the beneficiaries of that. Many other activist activities in the community that some people here know. It was not unusual to drive past Dunkirk Road and see the independence flag flying and see the placards lined up out the front and the school kids going past, reading and pointing at these placards. So, Leo, as we know, had more lives than a cat. It was a struggle. He lived life to the full. He was loved by many of us, but in particular by his soulmate. And as she said, "Oh, my handsome man, doesn't he look great?" But also the beloved Poppy in particular, to Corey and Courtney and Mariah, whom Leo and Barbara helped to bring up. And he was so proud and fond of you. So now let me open the floor for some who would like to share some stories here. I know the fire brigade is keen to do so, but we'll also have some time afterwards as we have a kai to share those stories as well.
Kia ora koutou, mō mātou whānau. I stand here as myself at the moment, I hope. No. I would like to introduce ourselves. For you people that don't know, my darling here, not yours at the moment, nah. No. Leo was more to me than a cousin. He was my brother. I suppose I better say who I belong to and who I am. Ko hau Margareta Desai, ni Richards. My father was Leo Te Reotahi Richards, and Leo was named after him. I didn't get to know Leo till later on down the track, but I'd like to introduce my elders, Shane. Shane worked very closely with his uncle, Shane. The big lady here, she was the lady that gifted us the land that he worked with. Andy, he's our second in charge. He's my son-in-law. His name is Andrew Brown. The little girl over here is my baby, Ella Main. The big man over here is Rikirangi Kiriopa, and he is our fire chief. I just wanted to introduce ourselves first and how Leo made a massive change in the Manaia community. I think I don't know how to say this but I thank you, Barbara and Mokos, for giving him to us, letting him come and do what he gave to us and the whole of our community. I think from here on, I will give this over to our fire chief, Ricky.
Thank you. Tēnā tātou whānau. We, the whānau and members of the Manaia Volunteer Rural Fire Force, would like to express our deepest sympathy to the family and friends of Leo. For those who didn't know, Leo played an integral role in the establishment of our fire station. He dedicated his time and expertise for free, and in doing so set set the foundations for our fire force and our community to grow. We'll always remember you, Leo, and appreciate all that you have done for us. We'd like to acknowledge Barbara and her grandchildren for letting Leo give up his time for us. To all the whānau and friends, if you're ever passing through Manaia, do call into the fire station. It's a beautiful building, and you're most welcome to come along. Our fire station is a monument of his love. Thank you.
Go fly away with the Lord. Let him take you to that special place where he promised you'd be free. Let him give to you wings of an angel, so that you can fly away with the Lord. Go fly away, go fly away, go fly away.
Tuatai ko te ui ki te atua, e whakahoonore ana ia te kingi tu haitia, mihi ana ki tō tātou pare, mihi ana ki tō tātou marae, e aroha ana mō rātou, kua pitirangi tia, mihi ana kia tātou, mihi ana hoki ki tā tātou, wāriki nui o tēnei rā. Kia ora anō tātou katoa. E mihi nui kia koutou, ko Yvonne Hemera ahau, ni Yvonne Richards. Ko au te kaihana tuatahi o ia. I am Yvonne Richards. I am Leo's first cousin. His mum and my dad were brother and sister. I stand up here and recognise Leo because Leo always came home. He came home to us. If there was a tangi on, he was right there. And not only that, he gave lots of good advice. And as you can see, he built our fire station, and our lovely cousin who just spoke, that was our first cousin too. Her father, my father, were the real brothers, but Auntie was a sister, but half sister to our uncle and my dad. But over the years, my mum and my dad always came here. He'd come over the hill, come over the hill and go to the TAB over here and take a horse, take a punt, and have a few beers. When he finished, he'd go and spend time with the cousins, maybe to Bonnie's house afterwards, and get somebody to take him home from there. But my father was a classic. He loved his whānau. He was a great man too, and Leo and all the whānau looked up to him. And he loved his family. And so this is my time to say aroha. I wasn't supposed to come here today, but I did. And I think it was supposed to be. Our aroha goes out to you, Barb, and the whānau. Kia kaha, kia maia, kia manawa nui. So I have a little song, and I think if my cousin come up and help me, but e ho tūnei te mana I will rise and look for you. Hari atura e koro, hari atura ki po tātou tūpuna pare, haere, haere, haere.
Ka tira ai tu ane tēnei raro ngā tīmatanga kōrero, me wehi ki te atu i runga rawa, e mau ngā rongo ki nunga i te mato te whenua, e whakaaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. Anō reira e tara ngā tira, e lia, takato mai, takato mai, takato mai. Takato mai i roto i te takato maranga o rātou mā. Te hunga ko ngaru ake ki te pō. I runga ake nei, i roto i ngā wikingi, mahua ake nei. I reira tēnei, te takotoranga o te rā rangatira a Ross Smith. Ka tira ko kōrua tēnei, ko haere ki tō tātou kaihanga. Nā te mea nāna no te ki. I te wā i whakarite ai, ka hoki mai e ia ka tango atu e tātou ki aia i tōna wā. Ko koe tēnei rā. E oki ana e te oki ngā mo tāu mo te tanga. No reire e te rangatira, moi mai, moi mai, moi mai. E mōhi o ti ai, e roa tonu koe, e noho ana i raro i te māwiwi tanga. Engari tō kaha, tō kaha. Ko tae te wā i roto i ngā rā, ka moi o kanohi, ko ti mātai tō haere, a ki tō tātou rangatira, ki tō tātou kaihanga. A koe nei te tangi atu e taku rangatira, haere, haere, moi mai i roto i te ariki. Whakaaro tonu au, me tae a tinana, i mui a koe i te newa, ki te mihi atu ki a koe mo au nei mahi, mo tō tāua whare, i paukaha i koe, kia whakatika kia tū pakari, kia tū pai ai i te newa. No reira koe nei te hāhi, koe nei tō tāua hāhi i te hara mai ki te mihi kau atu ki a koe. Koro ngā ke nei i tō tuakana i kōrero nei, mō au nei mahi, mō tō tātou whare karakia. Nā ua no hoki, i whakatika i te wā, tatania e hingai i roto i te kaha o te hau. No reira e taku rangatira e lio, ko mutu tāu nei mahi, ko oki koe te oki ngā. Ko tae tu koe ki a rātau, te hunga ko ngaro atu rā. Ko tae tu koe ki tō tātou kaihanga. No reira e moe atu rā. A koe nei ka mihi atu ki te whānau e noho nei i raru tēnei ka pua pauri. Ka hoki anō ki ngā kōrero i kōrero hia, i aku mātua. Mā te atu anō hoki koutou he manaki hei tiaki, e whakamāmā e nei taimahatanga katoa ke ringi a koutou. No reira kia kaha kia mai, a kia manu anu. Ka tira tātou katoa ko tae mai, ki te poroporake tā tātou rangatira, ki te mihi atu ki aia. Koe nei ka mihi atu kia koutou huri no i roto i tō tātou whare. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia koe rā, e te minita, kanu i te mihi atu. Ko koe e whakahaere tā tātou mahi tēnei ahi ai. A tēnei rā, koe nei ka mihi atu. Ka tira, o tātou e nei, e tangi nei, e poroparake nei tā tātou rangatira, huri no tēnā koutou kia ora tātou. A māku he waiata te tā koutou waiata i te reo māpu. Re ki te ariki, kia mauria ki te rangi tūhaha, tāna tākoha tino nui. Ia mai ia, he parira ana hera, kia rere tawhiti ai, rere ki te ariki, kia rere tawhiti ai, rere ki te ariki. A piti hono tātai hono, tātou te ngamate kia rātou. A piti hono tātai hono, tātou te ngaola kia tātou huri noa. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora. I'm Renato, and I'm here because Leo was my friend. But I met Leo through Barbara. She was the one who celebrated my marriage 12 years ago. We became very good friends, and that's the way I met Leo. And one day he said to me, Renato, do you like quinas? Of course I like quinas. And he shared with me his very secret spot. So we went. He was the first man jumping into the freezing water. Even in that time, he had already his health conditions. Yeah, so we spent a couple of hours, and when I came back to the shore, he was teaching my son Lorenzo how to open quinas and eat quinas and oysters. That was Leo. Another nice experience with him was the passion to do roast pork and roast lamb. And he was obviously, he had a very creative mind, so the spit roast was made of a old washing machine motor. And the smoker was made of a filing cabinet, old filing cabinet. So we spent hours and hours putting charcoal and logs on the fire. And obviously we had a lot of good red wines, which was the best part of the barbecue, of course. By the end, after 6 hours, when we finished the barbecue, we were all half, hoo-hoo.
Just sleepy.
Yeah, just sleepy. I'm gonna miss my friend. He was extraordinary. And I know he's in better hands right now. Thank you.
My name is David Ross. I probably knew Leo longer than most people because we were born 3 weeks apart, 1942. We went to Central School together, and we had the record for getting the strap most of the time. In fact, Miss Hun, our lovely teacher, made a thing of Leo and I having straps on the hand every day for about 2 months. Every day. It didn't change us. I didn't see Leo probably after we left Thames. He went to Thames High. I went to St Stephen's. And then probably another 10 years later we met again. And there was big gaps, but there was always, I think last time I saw him was Barbara at Meals, and the time before that was Jazz and Blues Club. Yeah, at Plymouth Shed. But it was, we always just picked up where we left off. There's no big space. Lovely man there. Rest in peace.
Okay, I'm Ian Shaw, eldest son of Leo and Barbara. They taught me a lot of things, value of hard work done well, not to back down from people when they're wrong. He also taught me the appreciation of good food, growing it, catching it, cooking it and eating it, as a lot of you people already have alluded to, and the good things in life. Now, as I've gotten older, I've learned to cook too. He was very enthusiastic about making his wines and smoking fish and the spit roasts and the hangies and things. We enjoyed a few whiskies together, and a lot of stories got told, and he would often tell a story, and then he would ask whoever was the guest, tell a story. And sometimes the guest would say, I don't know any stories. And he would just say, make one up, but put me in it. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Anyway. He was inherently very practical, as we've already heard. Not an average chippy, but a craftsman. He took pride in creating and recreating things. His medium was usually timber or bone. Building at Parawai and many other old buildings that he's restored are a testament to that. I remember as kids, we always ate well. And that was a good thing. He was mostly fair with us. We never really knew whether he was proud of us, but boy, we knew when he was disappointed. Yep. But very, very positive about a lot of things. He built dinghies that were just about unsinkable. My mate Blaine, who's here somewhere, not sure, but he's here somewhere, I think. We used to go catching flounder in the Oraki Basin with his dinghy, and we always took a few home, and that was always good. And we brought home plenty. They were just about unsinkable. I remember one time we had family holidays. We went to Waikaremoana, and we took one of those dinghy out on the lake, and we had the whole family in there, plus a few other people that we, Dick Cuthbert and so on. And I don't know, that dinghy had the whole family plus a few other adults, and it wasn't that big, only sort of maybe that long, maybe that wide. And the water came in over the gunnels, and still it would not sink. So, it was well built. Excuse me. He was vigorous, and, after his illnesses started, he still went getting his kaimoana and stuff. Cancer could bugger off. He was a man of his generation. Head down, bum up, get on with it. Only look ahead. Never look backwards. Positive and grouchy in equal measures. Yep. I've inherited some of his strengths, I believe. And I believe that strong people are built by love. Thank you. Oh, the strap. I reckon I can beat his record because I had a teacher called Adams. Getting the hand strap on the hand, yeah. The strap. I had one teacher called Adams who strapped my hand every day at about 9:30 for a whole year.
Tēnā tātou, perhaps as you come forward, I invite you, those who are seated, to join with us as we sing our himene a whakaaria mai. Shortly, whānau, we are going to say our final goodbyes and close the casket. And then I'm going to invite you to stand as we commend Leo to God's keeping. The family would love for you to join with them next door for refreshments. If you have not had a chance to have time with Leo, he will remain here while refreshments are happening next door. Finally, the family will call you together as they prepare to take Leo to Parawai for a time before his private service. Thank you on behalf of the family for being here with them today. I want to acknowledge you, Jane. Thank you for looking after us. Thank you that in the midst of all that you have done, you have not been able to grieve. We know your love for Leo, not in the words actually, but in who you are, in the silence before Leo. God bless you. Today we have heard about Leo the brother, Leo the coffin maker, Leo who went to the movies empty-handed and came out with someone else's hand, Leo the cousin, Leo the man who not only repaired a church but also in turn repaired a community. Thank you for bringing your memories, whatever your memory is. I think it's important to remember that no one knows him better than Barbara. She knew him behind closed doors. And therefore she knows everything you have shared is true. And so we join with you now as you prepare to say goodbye to the sixth seaman. Well, that's what she wrote here. The man with the wonderful brain.
Thank you.
The man most of all who loved you. Would you please stand together? E te matua mo tō mātou, tino taonga ko ho mai e koe kia mātou. Mai I tāna whakatipuranga tainoa ki tēnei wā mate. E kore e te matua e mutu o mātou mihi atu ki a koe. I tēnei wā o tōna waka te kātinga nei e te matua. Whakakaha I tō mātou whānau I tēnei wā. I runga e te matua I tō ingoa, ka tino I noi mātou.